What if redefining success isn't just about personal growth, but about creating a modern legacy, one shaped by honoring your roots and forging a new path? For immigrants, legacy blends cultural heritage, lived experiences, and the responsibility to inspire future generations. I'm Stacey Luces. Welcome to Beyond the Quo, where we dive into untold stories, challenge conventional wisdom, and explore what it truly means to live authentically and unapologetically. Today's episode is a special one. We're going to be talking about redefining success, creating modern legacies, and a little bit about the courage it takes to really embrace every facet of who you are. Joining us is my incredible friend, Lola Small. She's a Taiwanese Canadian women's empowerment coach, a 2-time business owner, a 4 times best-selling author, and a fierce advocate for racial equity. Lola brings a unique perspective shaped by not only her immigrant roots, but also decades of leadership experience and her passion for helping women rise beyond limitations. She is also my co-founder of the Rising Beyond Global community, which we'll talk about in a little bit, where we are empowering women of color leaders to really have the strategies, resources, and connections they need to own their power, live authentically, and create a legacy that they love. Lola, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here with me this morning.
Good morning. It's such an honor, and I'm so excited. What an amazing way to start the day. So thank you for having me.
Yay. And guys, Lola is in Canada right now. We were just chit-chatting that it is freezing over there, and I'm commiserating because I'm in Florida, and you can't really see me, but I'm in sweater. So I was just excited to be able to wear something with sleeves. So in a world where women over 40 are leading the charge, not only in entrepreneurship, but social impact, Lola's story and insights are exactly what we need in terms of the wisdom to break free from the status quo and step boldly into our next chapter, whatever that is. We're going to dive into what it takes to have that level of courage and authenticity in spite of all of the things that are going to pop up for us, whether it's imposter syndrome or who am I, this one lone voice to do something different. And we're going to just learn just ways that she, not only in her work personally, but in the work that she does with her clients and just in the community writ large, how she's transforming not only her life, but the generations that are going to follow. So Lola, I want to start by exploring, you and I chatted a little bit about what this episode could look like. And one of the things that I love is this new perspective on leaving a legacy. I feel like we are, without saying that, redefining what leaving a legacy means. And I think in the past, it may have meant something along the lines of generational wealth. But now we're broadening that into, women who are at these intersectional crossroads of life, whether it's wellness, especially mental wellness, whether it's blended families, whether it's, living in multi-countries and having the perspectives of different cultures. What does that look like for our children who may question the way that the status quo is in whatever country they're living in? I want to say that, how have you seen that, and how has that influenced you in your life, and certainly with your hubby, Sean, and Jordy, your son?
Yes, absolutely. I think, for those of us who are immigrants or we've, been brought up by parents who have given so much of their own lives to give us the life and the opportunities that they've never had. I think that's something that, speaking for myself, I think it's already just ingrained in me, that I have seen the sacrifices that my parents made to bring us from Taiwan to the West so that we could learn English, so that we could have better job opportunities, and just literally have everything that they didn't get to have from their own upbringing. So when you've seen that firsthand, and when you've experienced how that impacts you as a person, I think it's already programmed within us that this is what we should be doing too. It's really like there's no really any other option. I think you have a very early understanding that what we have been given is a gift. And to repay that gift, we give that back to the next generation, right? Yeah. So, I'm very blessed. I, have a great husband. We have an awesome 8-year-old son who to me, it's a no-brainer that whatever I am, doing and becoming, I'm doing that as a part of how I am providing and supporting him as he grows into his greatness. So I think it's very much a generational thing. And I know that, you're a big advocate of that too, that
Yeah.
all these lives are interconnected, from one generation to another. And the new generation that we are cultivating and raising, the world is not like it was before.
No.
We don't grow up in one country and live in that country forever and die in that country. No, we are a multinational, global, traveling intersection of everything.
Yeah.
So to be able to just have that anchored in our children that
Yeah.
your wealth is different from our wealth,
Yeah.
and having to explore that and how that all comes together, I think is kind of one of the biggest challenges of our lifetime.
Yeah. And one of the things that struck me just now as you were talking is in the past, and I jokingly say I hit up 8 countries in the last 6 months, which I'm blessed to be able to do that. But in the past, you'd need a certain level of resources and status to be able to travel and sort of explore other cultures. And I venture to say now, even if you don't have the resources, whether it's the money or the whatever it is, by virtue of having a phone in our hand, that's like our new passport, right? Like with the emphasis on social media and access to all of these TV shows. I think I was watching the other day, Zac Efron has this show that he started during the pandemic. He was living, I want to say, in Australia. And I'm obsessed with the show because it's taking me into a lot of these cultures and these experiences that I could only have dreamed of or probably read in a book, right? But in that sort of immersive environment, it feels very much closer. And I think it's important that when our kids hear us and what we say, even from our own lived experience, they now have the option of looking at other sources and sort of figuring things out on their own and questioning us in a way that I think for the generation, like with our parents when we were growing up, we didn't have that luxury, right? It was just whatever mom and dad said went, right? How do you find that Jordy in particular, who, oh my God, he's so cute, missing his front teeth. I can't even. But take me back to when, and we'll get into Black Lives Rising, but take me back into when kind of he challenged you to step into a different role that you may not have envisioned for yourself a couple of years ago.
That's a great question. I think we don't grow up and think or know that, you're going to eventually advocate for something until it has become your lived experience, right? Yeah. So, I love how you frame that. So, of course, I'm originally from Taiwan, East Asian, and my husband is Black. His family's from Barbados, so he is Bayesian Canadian. And of course, our son, at age 4, already knows he's Malaysian, right?
Yeah.
Daddy's Black, mommy's Asian.
Yeah.
And, it was the summer of George Floyd, so 2020. He was 4 at the time. And, when the entire nation and the entire world started to really tap in to the fact that anti-Black racism is well and alive. And it was also during the pandemic. So we were stuck in front of our TVs. We didn't have anywhere to go, but forced to watch, the atrocities that happen in everyday life, especially in North America, where, Black people were still just trying to survive. So it hits you in a different way, when you have a husband who has told you about what it's like for him growing up, and the term death by 1,000 cuts, right? Where every racial incident, every slur cuts you deeply in a way, So now you're 51 and still trying to grasp self-worth in the middle of society, So then how that translates to a young child. So when the whole George Floyd thing happened, our son was 4, we went to the Black Lives Matter marches, and he was chanting. He gets it. He made his own little sign with his little 4-year-old scribbles, So, it really made me think, okay, you have that mama bear reaction, right? That knee-jerk reaction that, oh my God, like, I need to do something, it's not trying to be noble and you're trying to be Mother Teresa, but it's literally for the benefit of your own child,
Yeah.
I may not be able to make an impact for the entire world, but I sure can do what I can for my husband, my son, right? So yes, when you have kind of that lived experience where you're impacted at that personal level, then
Yeah.
it hits you in a different way. So legacy, the word and the concept becomes something very personal.
Yeah. And I think in our own way, and I have 2 kids, and so at the time, Alyssa was 14 and Adam was 10, so not much older than your son. And I think for me, their questions in general about the world and about how we show up for things that happen, it challenged me to stretch beyond my version of what I thought I knew and sort of to learn more. And wasn't born in North America. And so I didn't have that frame of reference at the time. Yes, I was college educated here and all of those things, but it was almost like a very academic conditioning, if you will. It was a very academic, right? And I went into corporate, and then it was very much a status quo existence. And this really forced me to think about, I at one point I was in a book club and all of the other members were from Howard University, and they would explore topics like this, and I would have my own frame of reference. And looking back, at the time I think I reached out to most, if not all of them, and I had to have a moment where I apologized because I just didn't get what they were experiencing and their lived experience. And I think me now, years later, that's the way I try to live my life, is I have my version of life and truth and what it means to be South Asian or Indian or whatever. And there's the lived experiences of other people. How have you seen some of this play out in the work that you and Sean do as you co-founded your business in Canada?
Yeah, and my husband and I now, of course, with everything that we do, we are in sports marketing as well, and we make sure that that is also built on the bedrock of diversity, equity, inclusion. It really is integrated, right? People like to think that we can take these concepts out and they are in a silo in itself. For example, in the States, them trying to cancel DEI. There's really no way. It's humanity, right? It's humanity layered within everything that we do. So, while you think you can take these concepts away and divest your money and investment away from that, truth eventually comes together, whether you have the lived experience or not. It all eventually comes back to you in a way because we're all interconnected. You may not have the same lived experiences as me or my husband, but eventually our children and your children will intersect somehow, and it's going to come back to you. So I think for those who are kind of questioning and wondering, okay, well, what's my place and what's my place in all this? As we try to work towards equity together, we're all eventually interconnected. So if not now, later it will catch up to you. So we definitely try to make sure we integrate that into everything we do. I mean, you look at sports, obviously, that's another subject in itself where everything is connected. So it's whether you face the truth now or later. So being able to do that in everything we do is paramount, and I think that's the way of the future. It's the way now, that however you do business, whether you're a corporate or entrepreneur or working the 9 to 5, it all has to be integrated. Truth eventually comes out to where we all have to face it together as humans living in a shared collective humanity.
And I think another way to couch this for our listeners and our community, as new as this community is, there's this real, it's almost an epidemic of loneliness in an environment that we have been most connected, right, via technology. And I think when you use the word truth, there's all this drama about, oh, your version of truth, my version of truth, there is no truth, whatever. I think the way that I look at authenticity for me in my life is what is my truth in this moment, and then always striving to be better by virtue of learning and by virtue of listening. And I think when we think about loneliness, right? It's not that you're lonely because there's nobody around you. It's you're lonely because sometimes you yourself are grappling with some of these questions and wondering what your place is in the bigger picture, for which you can now see everything about the bigger picture because it's right at your fingertips, but you're still feeling very much disconnected. And I want to talk to you a little bit about two facets of that, right? Segueing a little bit. You talked about that empowering the little girl in you. And then one thing that I deeply admire about you and have for years is you are so outspoken and vulnerable and courageous about talking about us in midlife, this perimenopause drama with brain fog and lack of this innate drive that has driven us for most of our life, where we would just get up and go. It didn't matter what was happening. And for the last 2 or 3 years, I feel like the little engine that could but can't, like you're starting and turning over the engine, and all I can hear is the grunting noises, but no big momentous movement. And you've been really amazing about showing the true parts, the authentic parts, the connected parts of yourself. Both little girl Lola, you know, even on your profile, you have that your picture of yourself as a child, and then being really open and encouraging other people to be courageous and share their own version of how has midlife in our 40s just stalled us, and battling those two things, right? Like, I want you to share a little bit about your thoughts on those. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's tough.
Right.
And I know for those who are listening, if you're in midlife too, you get exactly what we are trying to say without even having to say it. I
Yeah.
think, I love to think that it's because women, as the stronger sex or gender,
Right, right.
we get these challenges, but we can overcome because we are capable.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny because my Facebook profile photo of me as a little girl, I did that on purpose because it was a time in my life, and this is specifically last year, 2023, when I feel like it was one of the lowest times of my life, that I intentionally put that photo of myself as a little girl as my profile photo because I wanted to remind myself to always stay true to her.
Yeah.
Like the journey that she has been on to get to this point, even at my lowest, I know the strength and the power and the pureness and the whatever it is, the smile on her face, all that is still there. So
Yeah.
I kind of did that intentionally to just like give myself another
And
fuel
you
to
talk
just
about
stay
anchoring. I feel like
connected.
that's the way you anchored yourself, right? Like in having that photo.
Absolutely.
And tell me about
Absolutely.
tell me about the unanchoring, right? Because I equate perimenopause, and I had a full I had a hysterectomy last year. I have that's not a secret in my circles. And that crippled me in the sense of the recovery and the emotional, the suddenness of it, and all of the things, right? All of the things that came with it, and the aftermath, my hair dropping out, like all of the things. But those, I felt unmoored. You talk about feeling anchored in who you are inherently, little Lola. But for me, I felt like my anchor, like a ship in a freaking like storm, right? Like no direction sometimes. But how do you balance those two? Like what, advice for people to come out of
For
that
sure.
and not lose so much
It's so
of who
funny
they
because
are?
I think it'd be so like, interesting to hear everyone's perimenopause jolt. It really was a jolt and
Yeah.
still is. For
Yeah.
me, my first symptom was brain fog.
Yeah.
And I usually very much pride myself on, the way I think and how I think. And to not be able to think clearly, I was like, what is happening? I
Yeah.
know I'm not stupid, but I'm acting like it. So,
Yeah.
that was kind of the first sign into like, okay, something is something is different. So, I mean, I think really, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's really literally that life jolt, to be like a true test. Who are you truly that you
Yeah.
have said you were and are.
Yeah.
And when life throws you these things that really messes up who, your center, how do you find another gear? Literally, how do we find another gear to get through the physical, mental, emotional, very depressive state at
For
times?
sure.
All these internal
And I
chemical
feel like
changes
there's a lot
are
of
causing.
shame. There's a lot of shame and a sense of personal failure around when we go through these seasons, where we feel like we should be able to snap out of it, or we should be able to watch a video and DIY, drop the navigation system on and just come out of it with no ruffle or ripple in the scheme of everything else that we're balancing. And when we are dipping high and low, everybody around us is like, what's happening? And even we ourselves. That's one of the things I think in terms of just ripping that veil open and really having stronger discussions about how you navigate through this stuff helps so many women who just aren't comfortable sharing for fear of being judged.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me personally, because of the jolt being so big and it's so
Yeah.
disorienting,
Yeah.
it really challenged me to really go back to the thing that drives me the most that I'm working towards and have always worked towards. It may seem like it's temporarily unavailable, but
Right.
that's the coolest thing, right,
Yeah.
within all of us is that even if it's dormant or even if it's challenged, that resilience and that vision and that self-knowing of what you are trying to move towards in this lifetime is still always there,
Yeah.
right? So the challenge for me has been how do you refine that and how do you stay true to that and how do you keep going even if you're crawling, even if you're clawing, actually get out of that hole,
Yeah.
So
One of the
last year
things,
was that
yeah.
for
I mean,
sure.
I watched you kind of navigate that, and we've been friends for a number of years now. We were co-authors in our one of your best-selling books. We, we co-founded this membership, this community that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But that's one of the things I admired about the way that you were completely raw about what the hell was happening, and the amount of engagement that you received, both from men and women, because I think men don't know, right? I mean, you just think we're having a bad day or a bad week or whatever, but it really can be debilitating. And the fortitude to not only talk about it, but to still make micro moves towards your goals is imperative. I think one of the things that was super helpful for me, and this goes back to grounding who I am at my core and knowing what my core values are, which ironically had a lot to do with who I was as a kid growing up, right? And I love that it's a really important lesson for anyone looking to take something away from this. When you know who you are at your core and you understand who you've always been, when things like this happen and you're thrown off course, whether it's a financial challenge or a relationship challenge or a career massive hiccup, a layoff or something like that, or even a season where you just don't know what the heck is happening and what your future is going to look like, the ability to stay grounded and with that inner knowing can sustain so many storms in a way that nothing else can, in a way that no book, do you know what I mean? So I feel like one of the key things, if you don't know what your core values are and whatever version of that works for you, find those. One of mine, and I would love for you to share one of yours. One of mine, ironically, is fun. And it was never, fun wasn't on my freaking agenda for decades, Lola. Like, I came to this country when I was 17 years old, and it was foot on the gas for decades. It led to massive burnout, massive success, massive everything, living the dream, but also hitting rock bottom with my health. And through it all, I grew up on an island, right? Like we had fun. We played music. We were always laughing and skipping. And yeah, it was serious, but fun, I feel sometimes we think is so frivolous and like who has the time? But for me, incorporating play and music and laughter and joy back into my life in a way that was deliberative and not happenstance, you know, um, man, it changed the game for me. And I'm not always good at it. But what is one of your core values that you had to resurrect because in the thick of it all, you just lost sight of it?
Yeah, and I think, when life gets tough, that's when it really shines light, for us
Mm,
that we are
I
off
love that.
balance somewhere, that
Yeah.
there's something that we are forgetting
Yeah.
to stay connected to. I think for me, self-expression is
Mm,
probably kind of the biggest key and the fullest expression of ourselves.
mm,
Like we could get so hung up on whatever we are trying to achieve. Like you said, we work hard, we kind of just head down and try to crank things out and create and create. But then you forget that our expression and the fullness of our self-expression, it comes in many ways.
mm-hmm,
Your key word of playing is definitely one of them. And
mm-hmm,
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about wealth, that wealth now only isn't just monetarily or financial.
mm,
Are we remembering that wealth is also in our relationships and how we are spending quality time with
for
people who
sure.
we care about in a way that expresses who we are. And for me, I think, yeah, it's been self-expression that when it's times are hard or dark or challenging, how am I finding who I am, but not only finding that, but also expressing it in a way that feels good and true
Mm,
with the people
mm-hmm.
in my life. So,
I love that.
yeah.
One of the ways that, when I say play, I feel like I want to hone in on that a little bit because a lot of the loneliness in this epidemic and this sense of isolation that we have, even while surrounded at a networking event or at work or surrounded by material things, it really speaks to the uptick of communities where women in particular, but men also, are gravitating towards for similar and shared interests. And, it started, with meetups. I remember when I moved to Florida almost 10 years ago, I was like, oh my God, I don't have any friends. like, how do I find my people? And I'm all about uh, personal growth and empowerment. I mean, that's always been my jam. And that was the first thing I was like, oh, I need to find other women in the community that figure out the networking events, figure out like where they hang out and have coffee. And it felt so hard because it also brings into question the newness of not only an environment where Florida is very different from DC, where I spent 20 years, Washington, DC, but even in work, I feel like we can be lonely because maybe we are not showing up. We talked about authenticity, we talked about core values. Maybe at work, we're not showing up the way that we want to. And that really, I feel, dilutes our effectiveness and our level of fulfillment and happiness, our wealth in the work that we do that makes a difference, right? Talk to me about, when you and I, so Lola and I co-founded a community. It's, and that came really from the heart. And one of the core pillars of the work that, the service that we hope to do in the world has to do with whole self strategies. And Lola mentioned a little bit about it in terms of this concept of wealth not only being money, but share some of your perspectives on that, Lola, and then I can hop in and share, what rising beyond global community and all of those words were picked specifically, right, for their meanings. But talk about what whole self strategy means to you, coming from your background, coming from the future that you wish to see in the world.
Yeah, and I think a great place to start is what you've been talking about this whole time, where, the loneliness epidemic. we humans, of course, know that we live in a shared collective experience, but yet because of pain and trauma and all that stuff, the walls start to build up
Yeah.
over the years. And we know we need connection, we want connection, we crave it, but yet there's this wall of like, okay, I don't really trust. So I think that's where loneliness happens, right? You've got this discrepancy and this cognitive dissonance between knowing you crave and need that connection, but yet afraid
Yeah.
and not sure how to go about it,
Yeah.
I think it comes down to authenticity, right? The fact that when you are not able to share vulnerably, at least, your true self, your raw,
I could help you
unedited,
out there, but
unmixed.
I feel like I will botch the word also.
Like when we're not able to have that,
Uh-huh.
you're not able to truly have that connection. So that loneliness will always be there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Until you find a space and with other humans who you are able to do that with, then that wall drops. Then you are truly able to really reach that connection that your heart and your soul at a very deep level really needs, right? It's by having conversations like this where it's deep. We've been service level for too long.
Yeah.
And that's where the loneliness gets stuck, right? We get stuck there. So for me, when I thought about, I mean, of course, I've been in various, women's circles, masterminds, ones I have joined, ones that I have created. And I still keep coming back to it because I know essentially that's where we need to be, like eons ago from history, since the beginning of time, humans have sat around a circle, with a
Yeah.
fire in the middle
Yeah.
and come to give and receive each other that way, right? So it's in our DNA.
And
It's
it's
kind of
true, all
like,
of the stories that we pass on generationally, but even if go to any cave, you find anything, there's like some kind of story that tries to depict what was happening and the emotion behind it and share some nugget of wisdom to make the next person better or to warn them or whatever, right?
yeah, exactly. It's that whole self strategy that you mentioned, that is the core of our offering. It's not a transactional, relationship. It's a whole relationship. You get the bad side of me, you get the good side of me, right? You
Right.
get,
I
there's
am as I
the
am.
inner self and the inner dreams, but then
Yeah.
there's the external things we're creating. It's all connected. And so I think having, communities like that,
Yeah.
whether you have found yours or you go and create one, or if you are a woman of color and you want to join ours, of course, that's when it comes down to it, that's the core reason, having that is that when we are able to bring our whole selves
Yeah.
to our circles, we elevate the best of each other, right?
Yeah.
So,
And one of the things that, you talked about this concept of impressing each other. I feel like the women in my circle for the first time in my life are truly aligned to what I need, but also where I am. And I'm going to say this and it's probably going to sound weird, but I feel it's less about impressing and more about imprinting in terms of the level, the quality of the relationships that brings a whole level of different engagement and presence to my own life, not only personally as a mother, as a woman, as a business owner, whatever it is I'm doing in the world, it makes me better by having different level conversations and connection with the woman that I am very much in discernment about who's in my inner circle. And I think that when I say imprint, when we talk about whole self strategy, like, yeah, we can do happy hour and grab a few drinks, but there's a part of me that wants to have discussions like this. There's a part of me that wants to do an art class. There's a part of me that wants to get together with our kids and I just don't want a good time friend. Like, it has to be this is my life and let's let's be friends. And there are going to be people that, yes, colleagues also, who've become friends. There's a different level of boundaries that exist now that I didn't have in my 20s and 30s, and certainly as a teen. And I'm trying to share this in a way with my kids, because being a teenager, like having these low level interactions with people that hurt you, or you just don't know how to manage expectations, I feel like you take it into adulthood and you create these rules based on experience in your younger years that cripples you in your adult years. And I'll give you an example. If you had a really bad heartbreak or a friendship that went sideways because they betrayed you or dated your boyfriend, whatever, then maybe a rule that you've subconsciously created is, I can't trust men, or my friends will always take my guy, or no, I'm unlovable, whatever the rule was that you created, it drags itself into your future. And I think part of the work in unbecoming is being very aware that this can happen, and also having the level of friendships and the level of trust. Like, you are one of the people I trust in my life to tell me if I'm messing things up, or if maybe we did something, or I led a workshop and you're like, that just didn't come across as you. Like, I trust you to give me that truth because I need it to get better so I can serve better. And even with my kids, I say, look, I'm human. Like, I will mess up. But I think I would love to hear your thoughts on that level of discernment around the types of relationships you have now, both in business, but we can't separate business from personal anymore. I just don't think it's possible. Like, if I can't be who I am here, there, and everywhere, like, I would prefer not to do the engagement. I'm done with that. And I think that takes so much work to be true to even that statement.
Yeah, it comes back to the fact that we're everything's interconnected, so it's really impossible to be authentic here, but then inauthentic somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. Especially that piece of business or whatever means so much to you. Work is our lives. I think being able to unlearn, the things that we have been taught and the ways that we have been conditioned.
The unconditioning.
Yeah, that's part of the journey,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
as much as perimenopause may suck and midlife may be challenging, that's one of the magic and the gifts of this time, right? That we are able to have that wisdom that we did not have in our teenage years, to say, now I can learn to discern, who is a good friend, but who may not be that may not be a good friendship for me.
Yeah.
Somebody can be a great person.
Yeah.
But we have to be able to have this kind of life experience to be able to discern whether or not how much boundary we want to put up with that person. I think that self-responsibility to know that we eventually get to decide who we let in and don't let in and how much, that's part of the journey and the learning.
Yeah. And a part of it too is, what are we going to allow ourselves to do to ourselves? I know that sounds weird, but we probably trash talk ourselves the most to ourselves, detonate our health goals. I was reading this thing that says, I don't know if it was Mel Robbins or somebody, the quickest way to live 7 years more is to do these things. Girl, it was simple shit. It was like, drink water, take a morning walk, right? And then it said the quickest way to die quicker, no sunlight or no going outside. And I will tell you, the last 2 or 3 weeks, I wouldn't say I've been in a bit of a funk, but I've just been busy, and all of my good habits fell to the wayside. Every single one. I showed up for everybody and everything. And for Stacey, zip. And I read the freaking 10 things that kill you quicker. And I'm like, oh, I'll be fucking lucky to make it through to like Wednesday. because the self-sabotage is wild. It's
Yeah.
wild. And I'm coming up on the anniversary. And December is always a tough month for me. Just a lot of grief, a lot of anniversaries of deaths, a miscarriage, like all of these things. So December, I almost want to be sad in December. And the fact that I recognized that about myself this morning, like on the drive here, I was like, it kept drawing on me that, of the 10 things, 7 of them are what I'm doing actively right now. The bad things, which means shortening my life, right? And I'm making a decision not to. So a part of this for me is, oh my God, that's such a pattern that I have to interrupt. And so I said yes to, a happy hour thing on Thursday, even though I want to kind of, it's cold and I want to like withdraw, almost to find connection with myself, because I feel like I'm going to be letting somebody or those passed on down if I am celebrating during the time when they pass. Does that make sense? Is that weird?
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's the whole self thing, right? It's understand that physically, intellectually, spiritually, emotionally, all of these things are connected, and how you show up, and you get to change them if you are aware that you're doing these things. That's the power. That's the space of owning your power.
Yes, absolutely. That you know yourself so well.
Yeah.
That you know when to retreat and when to challenge yourself to break out of that retreat,
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And even talking about it, like I think I will text you and I'll be like, oh my God, it was just, and you'll be like, girl, the moon is in retrograde.
Yeah, there's a season for everything, and for us to be able to be, like
Lola
you said,
talks me out of the ditch on a regular.
Yeah.
I want to say one of the things that I deeply appreciate in you as a human is the way that you show up even when the going is tough. And they will, there's this saying, and I will botch it, but it's who you are in your darkest day is who is the truth about a person. And I know for many of us, we've been in relationships or projects or a work situation that went to hell in a handbasket, and people showed up terribly, critically, or infighting, or retreating, or whatever, right? And I think that is one of the reasons you and I get along so well, is we went through some fire together. And we stayed true, for the most part, I want to say, to who we are. And that's made everything else going forward, I believe, so much more rewarding. Because I know that if shit ever goes really, really bad, how you're going to show up. And I think that's the power of authenticity, is having the confidence to be yourself no matter what, even if people don't like it or appreciate it or understand it, because they're not used to whatever it is you're bringing to the table. It doesn't mean you should stop serving that meal.
Yeah. And, I love that we have, and I love that we had the opportunity to go through fire together. And I'm sure we will continue to go through fire together because, to me, I like to think that we choose the growth.
Yeah.
Right?
I love that.
We choose the growth. I mean, everyone's going to have tough times. Everyone's going to have challenging things that really ask you who you truly are. And we learn, but we choose to see the growth. We choose to say, okay, what's this trying to teach me about me? What am I not seeing about myself, or what do I still need to learn?
Yeah.
For this pattern to not continue, and if we can kind of like, I like to use the snow globe analogy. If we can kind of take ourselves out from the whole situation and look at it from a bigger picture, and still choose the growth, still choose to, be the better person, or owning up when you know that I could have done things differently.
Yeah.
That's growth. That's all I can do under that circumstance.
Gosh,
right?
That just hit me in the solar plexus when you said choose the growth, because here's the freaking thing. Not everything is a growth opportunity. Some things are just messy, and some things are just a shit show. You have to understand when to walk away from something that's not serving you or your growth. Don't take the beating, is what I'm saying. versus the thing that's meant to improve you, make you better, make you wiser, make you stronger for the things that you have yet to do. And I think that we always, and I don't want to use the term people pleasing, but it's to some extent our upbringings, you take the abuse a little bit because it's like, well, maybe I deserved it. On some level, you think you earned whatever that negative interaction experience was. And that is not always the case. And a part of what I am a stickler for now in my own, or owning my power and in coaching the women that I coach and in leading the things that I lead, is the ability to be like, no, it wasn't right. And I don't have to put up with it, and walking away.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So Lola, as we wrap up, tell me, and I feel like you just shared it, but I'll still ask the question. For the people, for folks listening that, and you know, I want to say, when I chose the name for this, Beyond the Quo, there is nothing wrong with the status quo. Unless there's something wrong with it. And so for people that are thinking about taking some of what they've heard, and we went through quite a bit. We talked about perimenopause. We talked about navigating wise words to your younger self. We talked about raising children and legacies. We talked about this sense of isolation and loneliness, and really working on finding communities that match your vibe and inspire you and make you grow and live up to your full potential in the world. We talked about owning our shit and kind of pushing forward, and then sometimes just letting it go. If you had to kind of pick a word of advice, or maybe 3 techniques for people that want to step outside of their status quo, given your life experiences, like, what would that be?
3. Oh my goodness. Well, first,
it could be a one big juicy one.
I mean, I think just one big juicy one. And for me, that is, you know, we have one life to live, right? We have one life to live. Like, I have always, I don't know, you know, that kind of came to me. I don't know what point in my life, but we have one life to live. So I want it to be the most kick-ass that it can be.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have, I mean, like the Eminem song, right? One shot, you know, we get this one opportunity.
Yeah.
And we are the only one that gets to decide what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
Right? So going back to choosing the growth, or beyond the quo, and rising beyond, is this all there is? Is my current life and how I have always done what I have done, or how I've always done things because that's what was expected of me, and is still is expected of me at age 47? Is that all there is to it? And is that all I am capable of creating? Hell no. You know, it always comes down to no.
Yes.
Unless you're at that point where you're like, yeah, man, everything I have wanted to create consciously, I'm currently living. There's more.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And we ourselves stop short, or we stop ourselves from that, right? There comes a very pivotal point when you say, you know what? I'm sorry if this might disappoint somebody I love, but at the end of the day, on my deathbed, I answer to myself.
Yes.
So do you have that courage to say, you know what? No, I'm going to now create and consciously create this best life for me that I know is possible. It's possible because it's you've dreamt it, you've seen it, you've felt it. Because of that, it is possible.
It's an inner knowing. I mean, for me, you know, and in my first episode, I shared about my near-death experience and kind of all of the ways that jarred me out of my complacent status quo, which was a hella comfortable freaking life, into situations and growth and things that never would have envisioned had I not understood with absolute certainty that every day could be your last. Literally. I had a do-over. And one of the things that I think shocks a lot of the people I work with, my clients, is when I ask the question, you know, when they say, oh, making the change is hard and it's going to take them, even if it's a year, right? Because big change doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it could. But I'm like, well, if the thought of living the same day over and over again for the next 20 years until you retire sounds amazing to you, have at it. And, you know, you talk about regrets and you talk about choosing to stay in pocket because that feels comfortable. And the alternative, while murky, this place that you're in, which doesn't serve you anymore, feels better than the unknown. And I think making that leap of faith, for some people, maybe it feels like leaping into shark-infested waters. But I think, again, frame of reference, right? It could be a leap of faith. You could hold hands with somebody and do it. That's where community comes in. You could get a good coach. Like, however you decide to do the things Lola just kind of challenged you to do. Live your best freaking life. It's not just a t-shirt, guys. Right? It is absolutely possible. Lola, I want to thank you so much for jumping on early morning in Canada where it's 32 degrees and sharing all of this with us. Please tell people how they can find you and a little, you know, wherever you are on social media and so forth.
Sure. You know, it's getting colder here, but the cool thing is we get to do the things that we love, you know, and it
Yes.
keeps us warm that way. I'm mostly on Instagram, of course, on LinkedIn for the more, you know, formal stuff, but really where I am spending most of my energy right now is, of course, in our Rising Beyond global community where women of color who, like us, you know, have been through what we've been through, and we're at that point in our lives who are ready to, you know what, shed more layers to just truly be more me. And then, you know, at the point where they're choosing, let me go out there and be more authentically myself.
Yeah.
That's where I'm spending most of my time is inside our community. So definitely if you are listening and you are kind of resonating and vibing with what we're saying, you know, come join us. Obviously it's free.
Yes.
You know, it may not always be free, but we have found where we love serving the most, and you know that's where I'm kind of hanging out. But otherwise, Instagram, LinkedIn, you can find me there. But you know, Stacey and I will continue to be up to our shenanigans, so you can expect to see us maybe at a place near
Good
you,
trouble.
live in
Good
person
trouble.
soon as well. So thank you so much for having me and letting me, you know, blab and share. I loved it.
Girl, I loved it. So to lead boldly and authentically, we must first listen to that little girl within. That was kind of my biggest takeaway, and that her voice matters. I know when I feel out of pocket, I go back to why am I feeling this way? And it always ultimately is because something in the little version of me needs to feel safe, and I need to empower her, right? And I want to encourage you today to check in with the little version of you, right? Like one of the exercises that I encourage people to do is write a letter to your younger self, reassuring her, telling him or her of all of the things you're doing, or let that younger version write one to you.
I love that.
Right? Let them write one to you. And it is a really cool way, if you are in status quo, that you could see that those dreams that are still there, that maybe you're just distracted and haven't been paying attention to. And I love that it's December and we get to sort of reinvent and recreate. And there's all of this juiciness around the start of a new year, but it doesn't have to be December to do this. You could choose to do this at any time. So you've already done the quo, and it's time to go beyond. If you've loved this episode, please like, share with a friend, and join, subscribe to our community, and give us a 5-star rating. Give me a 5-star. I'm like, this is so new. So we're looking to make sure that people know that this is something that is juicy and worthwhile. And join us next week where we continue to break boundaries, create legacies that matter, and have amazing guests that have so much wisdom to share with our community. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lola.
Yeah.